Welcome to Faith Vocals. My name is Faith. If you haven't been to the channel before, I tend to talk about things I believe in, things that I'm interested in. Mostly I like talking about more philosophical subjects, and mostly from my perspective, which would be a Christian perspective. So I talk about religion. I just want to explore how our beliefs affect our interactions with one another, affect our process of coming to the truth. I believe that the highest goal, one of the highest goals that we should be pursuing is to come to the truth. Naturally, as a Christian, the thing I value most in my life is God. He would be the most valuable thing, person, entity, whatever you want to describe him as. So want to pursue him, but naturally a pursuit of him is worthless if it's not a pursuit of the truth. Now, I believe God and the truth are one and the same. I believe that God is the origin of all truth, so I have no conflict there. But I am very interested in having conversations with people who have a different belief from myself, and seeing if we can have those conversations constructively, where we can explore one another's beliefs, and maybe learn something about the world that we would not have come to ourselves just on our own. Maybe we want to alter our belief once we come into contact with someone else's belief, because we realize their belief is closer to the truth than ours is. On the other hand, maybe we find out that I believe my belief is still true, but now I have the additional understanding of that person and where they're coming from, their beliefs, and I can think about things in a slightly different way from a new perspective. I think that would tend to make us wiser also. Even if we don't wind up changing our beliefs, it is at least beneficial to come to learn someone else's beliefs. So that's one of the big things that I want to explore on this channel. Of course, I'm committed to my Christian beliefs, but also want to keep myself open-minded, recognize that I don't have a monopoly on the truth, see what other people believe also. Explore, learn as much as I can from conversation. Naturally, I'm a small channel, so where there are no viewers, then I have to fill in the airtime. So what I've been doing, let me go ahead and pull this other screen up. I've been going through the Bible. We're in the book of Genesis, so the very first book of the Bible. We've made it all the way to Genesis chapter 17. So I'm going to be continuing on the story of Abram. Interestingly enough, in our header here on this Bible website that I'm on, it's called blueletterbible.org if you're interested in looking up the Bible on your computer also for free. Not sponsored. I really appreciate the site though. But blueletterbible.org, or if that's too much to type, you can type blb.org, like Blue Letter Bible, blb.org, and get here also. And I just really love this Bible tool. I think it's interesting that our first verse here starts with the name Abram, but they start with the name Abraham in their header for the tool. So hint, hint, I don't know. Maybe, well, I do know. So we'll see. If you don't like spoilers, then pay me little mind. So we've up until this point, we've been dealing with Abram. Abram is the name that our I want to joke and say protagonist. Of course, that makes him sound like a story character. I believe Abram was a historical person. That was the name that he was given at his birth. And now in this verse that we're coming up to, it says that he was 99 years old as of the section of the story that we're going to look at, the section of the story, the section of the account. Again, I do believe this is history, so I keep that in mind as I'm reading it. If you have a difference of belief, then I would definitely be interested in hearing from you also. let me go ahead. Before I go any further, I want to make sure that there's something clear here. This heading here and this text here do not come from the same source. So when we Christians tend to believe the Bible is true. There are people sometimes try to ask us gotcha questions like, do you really believe the Bible is totally literally true? What about like the parable of I'm having trouble imagining the exact circumstances that someone could come to, but maybe they'll bring up one of the parables. Do you really believe this parable actually happened? And the word parable, it's not a word that we use in modern English usually anymore. The word parable comes from a Greek word that means to throw alongside. It's an alongside story. It's Jesus told a lot of parables, and his point in telling the parable wasn't just to tell you that someone went out and farmed his crops one day. The idea was you're watching this character in this fictional story that Jesus told, and you're saying, oh, there's a correlation between that character and between something else that's real or maybe a little more abstract. And so that was a way that Jesus would, for instance, a pretty popular parable would be the story of the widow and the unjust judge. And so Jesus told this story of a widow who someone was encroaching on her land, was trying to take her land out from under her, and she had no one to defend her. She had to defend herself in the courts. She didn't have her husband to go to court for her, and didn't have anyone there to make bargains for her. So all she could do was plead on the mercy of the court to have her land protected, have her right to her own land defended. And yet, as Jesus tells this parable, he's describing this judge who's very unjust, doesn't care about justice. He's in the position of power and he's going to use it however it benefits him. And it does not benefit him to listen to a little widow woman. But Jesus's point in telling the story was, if the woman keeps coming back to the court and keeps coming back and keeps coming back, she's got nothing to lose. All she has to do is keep coming back. Then eventually that judge is going to say, look, it's in my best interest to listen to the widow because I'm going to get tired of seeing her in my court every day. And even just her persistence overcomes a lot of things that would put her at a disadvantage, would put the judge at an advantage. So Jesus tells this story not to let us know that there are unjust judges out there, or that there are little widow women who are being disenfranchised out there, or to tell about a specific story. His point is, if even an unjust judge, if even a judge who doesn't care about justice will finally listen after someone's been hounding him, even if she has nothing going for her, there is nothing about this widow that would encourage him to listen to her case. Just her sheer persistence is what's causing him to listen to the case. If even an unjust judge will listen to her case, then imagine what it's like to bring your requests to God, who is love. Not just who is loving, but the very definition of love. That is who God is. Love is defined by God's character. And so Jesus used that story to encourage his followers, don't give up praying for what you need, just because don't let a lack of faith keep you from continuing in prayer for what you need. He was encouraging them, be persistent, because your Father loves you more than even an unjust judge, and even an unjust judge would eventually give in under persistence. But someone, to get back on topic, sometimes we do get people who say, well, what about that? Do you believe that was a true story? Or they'll find something more outlandish in the Bible, and they'll pick something from the Bible that is clearly intended by Scripture to be fictional. There's a book that I want to study after we get done with Genesis, where not even halfway through Genesis yet. But after we get done with Genesis, I would like to look at the book of Job and start studying that. Usually you would think you'd go from the first book in the Bible to the second book in the Bible, Genesis to Exodus. But I think Job, well, I've heard that a lot of Bible scholars think that the book of Job was actually written before the book of Genesis. We Christians believe Genesis was written by Moses. Excuse me, I'm going to get my water over here. We believe Genesis was written by Moses. And the book of Job, we don't have a lot of clues about where the book of Job came from, but Job was from a location named Ur, and I do believe that's one of the locations that's mentioned in Genesis chapter 10. So shortly after the Tower of Babel, when the languages of the earth were scattered, when the one language that everybody spoke got scattered into various languages and the people of the earth separated, Ur was one of those locations that came out of that, and Job would have been a citizen of Ur. So I believe Job could well have lived pretty close to the time of Abram. Could have been around this era. So I'm thinking once we get done with Genesis and the accounts that are in Genesis, I would like to move on to Job and see someone who might have been a contemporary with Abram or with Abram's descendants, spoiler, that are going to be explained in the rest of Genesis, described in the rest of Genesis. We'll look at a contemporary to Abram, and then we're going to move on to Exodus, which tells the story of Moses, who would have come later in time. But the book of Job, I get very, very cautious when I'm reading any quotes from out of the book of Job, because like 4/5 of the book of Job, and I'm making that number up, but a huge portion of the book of Job is actually untrustworthy. Not to say that the book of Job is false, not to say that it is wrong. It's the structure of the book is almost like a dialogue, like a logical dialogue, like Socrates used to use to teach his students, or I think Plato wrote conversations that Socrates had, and I am by no means an expert in Socrates. I once thought Euthyphro was a real person, and then I realized that it was a character from one of these dialogues. I'm not 100% convinced of his how he related to, say, the Euthyphro dilemma was the context that I was in. So I stand to be royally embarrassed sometime if someone sees my comments there. But anyway, but philosophers often have this tendency to use dialogues to have conversations between someone who does believe what the philosopher is trying to point out and someone who doesn't believe it, and to hash out the details of these dialogues that way. And so that's kind of the format that I think the book of Job is in, and I'll try to get back on track shortly. But just to say, you have the setup for the book of Job. You have the beginning of the story. There's this kind of Satan and God have this contention. Of course, Satan will not win that. God is always going to be on the winning side of a conflict like that. But Job kind of gets wrapped up in the middle of it, because he is outstanding on earth for his righteousness. So God kind of points him out and says, "Have you seen my servant Job? There's no one as righteous as him." And so that makes him the target of Satan's side of the conflict in this story. But mostly what we see is Job goes through a lot of suffering. He's famous for all of the suffering he underwent. And some friends of his come, originally try to cheer him up, but then they start trying to figure out, why is it that Job is suffering? What did you do, Job, that God is no longer blessing you and that you're suffering now? And Job's trying to figure out why God is not letting him plead his innocence. Surely if he could plead his innocence before God, maybe God would let up on this suffering, would restore him to the man he was. But then again, since God has allowed the suffering, and since God is all-knowing, is God really just anyway? And it isn't until the very end of the book of Job that God finally says his piece. And up until then, the majority of the book of Job is humans trying to figure out from a human perspective this dilemma called the problem of evil. The idea is, if God was good, if God was all powerful, if God was loving, then surely there would be no evil, right? And so the book of Job spends a lot of time thinking this through from the position of a man who is suffering, and his friends who unfortunately are more inclined to turn on him than to be of any true comfort to him. But finally, at the end of the book of Job, then God gives his perspective. So do I believe that everything Job and his friends said is right? Do I take that literally? No, I understand that book of the Bible in its context. So likewise, the context here, this header, as I was pointing out, is something that we understand has been added later by translators, by the printers of the Bible, to kind of give us it's useful for me as I'm reading the Bible. I'm skimming through, and I'm Genesis 1, Genesis 2, Genesis 3, Genesis 4, Genesis 5, all these chapters. Where's the one that's holding the text that I'm interested in? And maybe I don't want to spend time skimming the entire page, or maybe I'd miss something skimming the page, but you're familiar with this from nonfiction books. If you see a header, then maybe that header kind of gives you an idea, oh, this is my stop, good, then this is where I want to be. So likewise, these headers are, we Christians believe that the Bible itself, the text, is inspired by God, who does not lie. He is telling the truth. He may use analogies to get his point across. He may tell accounts where humans are involved in lying, or I'm aware of a story where there's a lying angel or a lying spirit that was sent to do a task. But God himself does not lie. So what we find in the text of the Bible is true or leads to the truth. Again, referring to those analogies and to the accounts of non-God figures who have lied. And then we recognize this is not inspired, these headings. And so I just wanted, in case you're someone who's new to the Bible, who's not familiar with this text, if you're trying to figure out how to understand this book that we Christians read, I don't want you to get confused and think that this is part of what we cling to and hold to. If there were anything amiss in one of these headings, there well could be, because it's not inspired scripture. I should hope not, because it's alongside inspired scripture, and I think the people who write the Bible are doing their best to be cautious, not to put error next to God's word. But I just wanted to make that distinction. So anyway, back onto the topic. I don't think we've even gotten to our topic yet. First verse. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless. And I think it's very important for context that we go and see what the verse immediately before this one is. So again, the chapter and verses. So this is, you may not be able to tell so easily since I'm using a Bible app. If you could see me actually turning the pages of the Bible, you'd know I turned to the previous chapter, Genesis chapter 16. I've had opportunity to work with someone on the computer through Zoom, and so sometimes when I move from one screen to the other, I lose them because I go that fast. But the fact that we're 16 chapters in, going to be 17 chapters in, the fact that this chapter is broken into 16 verses, that again is not divinely inspired. When the Bible was originally written, it was written all as one, not all as one piece. We have 66 what we call books in the Bible. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and on. I was talking about Genesis and Job earlier. The chapters and the verses were added in later, which does us the service as, let's say a bunch of Christians are in a congregation, in a church congregation, and the pastor is telling everyone, turn to Genesis 16:11, please. All of us turn to the same place. We're looking at the same section of the text. We understand the same context. But for the pastor to say, turn to, and the angel of the Lord said, please. Well, there may be a number of places where an angel was speaking to someone, and it would be easy to find the wrong place, or maybe we don't remember exactly where that line is in the scripture. So these are not biblically inspired, the chapters and verses. So I am going, it's like going back in the next sentence. It's like, I think you understand if you have two sentences on the same page, then you understand there's a context. And often we lose that context because we have these chapters and verses there. But again, it's helpful for us when we're trying to be on the same page as our fellow believers who are reading the Bible on their own, that we understand that we're able to kind of sync up what we're talking about without having to have perfect knowledge of every word in Scripture and its location. So in the previous chapter, the one that I dealt with last week, the final verse says, Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. And to quickly summarize this, Abram has been promised by God for about 10 years now that he's going to have a child. But Abram's wife is barren. Sarai is barren, unable to bear Abram a child. And so Sarai finally says, look, God's been talking to you, saying you're going to have a child, but it's clear it's not through me because God hasn't allowed me to have a child. This should be natural, but I'm not giving you a child, not by any will of mine. God's just not allowing it. How about we do what's very common and cultural in our day and age? Of course, she didn't say it this way, but it was understood. This was the culture. This was acceptable in their region for the people that they were around. Take my servant and make her your concubine, I think is the word that gets used for Hagar in this situation. You'll have a child by her, and I will claim that child as mine, basically. There's I wonder if it's similar to a concept called the levirate marriage. We see this later in Israeli law. There's laws in Israel about if a man had a wife and the man died before his wife could give him children, then it was understood in Israeli law that the man's brother would marry the wife, and the child that came from their union would be the son of her former husband. So even though biologically it was the son of the second husband and the wife, it would be attributed to the former husband so that he would have someone to carry on his name. That's the concept of the levirate marriage. And I'm wondering if there's something similar going on here in Genesis 16, verse 2, where Sarai says, go into my servant. It may be that I shall obtain children by her. So I'll kind of take the credit for this child, even though it's born by my servant, who was Hagar, the Egyptian servant, slave, basically, who was in Abram's household. So anyway, that's the kind of summary of where we are at this point. And at the end of that chapter, it says Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. And I know 86 seems pretty old for a guy to be having a son. Around this time, people were living to be 200 years old. So I'm not sure how that affects the perception of age. 86 would have been just a little over a quarter of that time period. So I don't know if that would have been considered old to be a father or not at that time. Certainly didn't stop Abram and Hagar. Abram was 86 when Ishmael became his son. And the next verse, it says when Abram was 99 years. So from one verse, Abram was 86 years when Abram was 99 years. So in between these two verses that are right next to each other in the Bible, there's a span of 13 years. And I'm not going to die on the hill that this is significant, but I'm going to spend some time on it, thinking about what those 13 years must have been like, because when we started Abram's story, the Bible tells us Abram was 75 years old. And then God has this conversation with Abram. Let's see. I'm not sure it actually tells us his age, but clearly when we get to, so Genesis 16:3. So same chapter we've been kind of camped in from last week. Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan when he had this child. Now he's 86 years old. So in this span of 10 years, God has spoken to Abram 4 times. God told Abram, I want you to move to Canaan. So Abram moved to Canaan. And when Abram got to Canaan, God spoke to him again. God had told Abram before, I'm going to make you a great nation. Go to Canaan. And when Abram got to Canaan, God said, I'm going to give this land to your offspring. Well, Abram, there was a famine. Abram moved to Egypt, which is where I think he picked up Hagar. And then he had lied to save himself, had encouraged his wife Sarai to say that she was his sister so that no one would be tempted to kill Abram in order to get to Abram's lovely wife Sarai. But the Pharaoh wound up taking Sarai into his house and being plagued by it by God, because God had promised to bless Abram. So Abram had to leave Egypt after Pharaoh found out about that. So when Abram got back, he and his nephew Lot, who was living with him at the time, they had a lot of herds. The land was not able to support all the flocks that they had together, so they separated. That's when God spoke to Abram the 3rd time and said that Abram would have all of the land in the region. It's not like he let Lot have half of his inheritance. No, God was still promising Abram the entire land. So then some nations from beyond, some kings from some other nations came in, conquered the region that Lot had gone to move to. So Abram went to rescue Lot and showed loyalty to God, spurned the wealth of the wicked cities that Abram had saved kind of as a byproduct of rescuing his nephew. And God spoke to Abram again, and that is when in chapter 15 we have this great conversation between God and Abram, a really intimate conversation. I think Abram's being very vulnerable with God about his doubts, about having the offspring that God promised him, and God goes to great lengths to reassure Abram that he will keep this promise. But then in the next chapter, Sarai has this great idea, you know what, I'm not a part of the plan. How about you take Hagar and have your son by her? And then Abram was 86 and suddenly he's 99. I mean, not literally. It's the way it appears in the Bible. The 2 verses are next to each other, but in between those 2 verses is 13 years. 13 years that we don't hear of the Lord speaking to Abram. In the past 10 years, the Lord has spoken to Abram 4 times, and I don't know how spread out those times were. If the first 2 times were at the beginning of Abram's story when he was 75, and if the last 2 times were closer to when Abram was 86, or if it was more evenly spread out so that it was only a few years between these conversations, I don't know. Could be that the past 10 years felt a lot like this period of 13 years if the conversations were kind of on either end of this. But I'm just trying to think through what it might have been like if it had been a little more spread out. If Abram had kind of Abram couldn't expect God to talk to him. There's nothing about one conversation that says in the future there will be another conversation. But for Abram, looking back on his life, he's had all of these opportunities to speak with God, and then he does what his wife wants. He takes her servant as his concubine. He has this son Ishmael. Praise the Lord, what he's promised has come true. Abram has finally got a son. He's going to be the father of a great nation, just like God has promised. And then years pass, and there's no communication from God. But then again, maybe why would there need to be communication from God? Because didn't Abram and Sarai do what God wanted them to? They got the son. That's what God has been promising all along. And Ishmael is going to grow up to be a great nation. We find in the end of Genesis chapter 16, Hagar had, unfortunately, when Hagar gave birth to Ishmael, or was pregnant with Ishmael actually at this time, she saw that she was having a child, and so she kind of elevated herself in her mind above Sarai. She became haughty, and that did not sit well with Sarai, who began to mistreat her. So nobody's really behaving perfectly in this context. Hagar winds up fleeing. An angel of the Lord finds her in the wilderness, and he tells her, your son, you shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has listened to your affliction. And I think this footnote is going to tell us Ishmael means God hears. So you're going to call his name God hears. He shall be a wild donkey of a man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will dwell over against all his kinsmen. Okay, I thought there was more to it. Oh, no. Yeah, the angel of the Lord says, I will surely multiply your offspring so that they cannot be numbered for multitude. So that's what I was thinking. So confirmation, when she gets back, and if she has opportunity to converse with Abram, I'm not sure what the relationship between Abram and Hagar was after this point. I'll give you some of my thoughts, but I don't know how free she felt to speak to him, and I'll explain why in a bit. But Ishmael was thought at that time to be the son of the promise, right? Sarai had said, well, God has surely made you a promise, but he's not made me a promise. If anything, he's been holding me back from being the fulfillment of that promise for you. So Hagar must be the fulfillment of the promise. And sure enough, Hagar gives Abram this son. So Ishmael must surely be the fulfillment of the promise. And the angel said that he would multiply Ishmael. Surely this is the offspring that Abram has been promised all this time. Probably had some rough time raising Ishmael. He shall be a wild donkey of a man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. So now it's been 13 years between the time that Abram was 86 and now he's 99, and Ishmael would be 13 years old by this point. So that sounds like a fun time to have a wild donkey of a man growing up in your tent. But surely this is Abram's son. Abram, I think there's evidence in the Bible. We're going to see it next week. We're not going to get to it this week, unfortunately, but there's evidence here that Abram would have been trying to raise his son to serve God. Tell you what, I'll skip ahead. I'm skipping behind already. We'll make up for it by skipping ahead a little bit. Next week, we're going to be covering this passage. But the Lord is talking to Abram again, spoiler. So we know what happens after 13 years. But the Lord says, shall I hide from Abram what I am about to do, seeing that Abram will surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him? For I have chosen him, that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring to Abram what he has promised him. So God has picked Abram because Abram will raise his children to serve God. So that gives me the idea he probably already was involved in Ishmael's upbringing. Ishmael is his son. Ishmael is his only son. So naturally, Abram's heart is wrapped around Ishmael, as it were. And Abram would be trying to raise Ishmael to serve God, which would be in keeping with why God chose Abram to be the patriarch that we know him to be from the Bible. what I think is interesting though, uh, when you look at this 13 years, you look at the arrangement of Abram's family. He's got his wife Sarai, and Abram has been faithful to Sarai for as long as he's been married to her, even though she could not give him a son. Even though Abram's name means exalted father, and God has been promising Abram a son, and surely that was the desire of Abram's heart, to have a son, and it was culturally acceptable for Abram to have more than one wife at this time. It took Sarai to finally say, Abram, you need to kind of open up. You need to consider the idea of another wife. Abram did not get the idea himself, or did not consider the idea himself to get another wife. It was Sarai who gave him permission to get another wife. So now Abram has Sarai, and he has Hagar. And he has Hagar's son. Ishmael is, so it's clear that Abram is able to have sons. It's not his fault that he can't have a son. It's Sarai's limitation. So what happens after Abram has a son by Hagar? How many sons does Abram have after 13 years? One son. So after 13 years, Abram knows he can be a father, yet he has not gained any other children through the avenues that are available to him, namely Hagar. So looking at that, I've just got to speculate. Abram's heart is still with Sarai, right? Because he's been married to Sarai. He's been loyal to Sarai. The way he converses with Sarai, I've pointed out in the past, even when he was asking her to lie for him to protect him. So that wasn't very great. But even in the process, he's telling her, I have personally experienced your beauty. That's why I'm afraid someone's going to take you from me. So the way that he expresses himself to her is very heartfelt. Because it's different to say, yeah, I know you're beautiful, and to say, I have experienced that personally. And that's the kind of language that Abram is using. I've mentioned that a couple weeks ago. So he has the option now. He's got Sarai and he's got his concubine Hagar. And yet I don't see him pursuing further relations with Hagar over this 13 years. Through what little reading between the lines, I'm not seeing evidence that he is pursuing further relations with her. Instead, it seems that, okay, Ishmael is the son, we're done with Hagar. Which my heart breaks for Hagar, because what did she do to ask to be in this situation? Wasn't great that she became haughty once she had a son, but she certainly didn't ask to be Abram's concubine. It was Sarai's idea. And yet now it feels like she's kind of cast off now. It was, she's being, Abram had an agenda that he was pursuing, and once the agenda was done, he didn't need to, he had no love for Hagar, is the image that I am getting based on reading between the lines. So I do feel bad for her. I can kind of see why she's feeling mistreated by her. Well, the Bible objectively says she was mistreated by her mistress Sarai. Describes this negative place that she's in largely because of the culture, and Abram happens to be the one who is buying into the culture with the instigation of his wife Sarai. And then there's nothing for Hagar here except it's an environment in which to raise her son, which is why I think God told her to come back when she ran away. I think God is saying your son will be provided for in Abram's tent. Abram's tent is actually a great place for your son to be raised, even though you are being afflicted in that location. This is where Ishmael is going to be raised as well as possible. And of course, God knew Hagar's future. So we're going to be seeing what happens to her later, but not this week. we're going to get into the section of the Bible that I actually wanted to talk about now. So Genesis 17. 13 years later, the Lord appeared to Abram. So Abram and Sarai, I wonder if Abram considered how long it had been since the Lord had spoken to him, but maybe he would have justified it by saying, well, we did what the Lord wanted. The Lord's been telling me I'm going to have offspring. Clearly the Lord wanted me to remain open to that possibility. Now I have offspring. So why does God need to reach out to me anymore? Why does God need to communicate with me? I've done what he wants me to do. So I guess he's just leaving me alone, and that's the way things are, right? Wrong. Because the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless. Let me check this footnote. I'm curious about this God Almighty thing. I wonder if that's related to anything we've seen before. I haven't thought to look at it now, but before I get that, let's see if the footnote says, okay, El Shaddai would be the name God Almighty. I just wonder if it's related at all to Genesis chapter 14. So let me chase that rabbit trail really quick. If you've been around the stream at all before, then, excuse me, you probably know that I may wander and ramble a little bit. That may be something that I would develop skill to, that I would be proving more skill if I could curtail, but so far I haven't developed that skill yet. I just wanted to check this this section here and see. Okay, no. This Hebrew section, El Elyon, Abram had a meeting with someone named Melchizedek. Not an ordained meeting. It was after the, not a preordained meeting. It was after the battle where he saved his nephew Lot. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, shows up, and he gets some extra attention in the Bible. He's kind of a mysterious figure. Why out of this nation of, why out of this region where there's all these Canaanites who eventually get conquered by the nation of Israel later on, when God is punishing the Canaanites for all of the evil that they've done in the land. During Abram's time, there's this fellow named Melchizedek among the Canaanites who happens to be a priest of God Most High. El Elyon is the Hebrew name that's given for God in this section. And when Abram meets him, he embraces the way that Melchizedek is worshiping God. Apparently, he gives Melchizedek a tenth of all of his wealth, and he starts calling God by the same name that Melchizedek does. Abram starts calling God Most High also. So I was just wondering if it had anything to do with God Almighty, which it gets used in this section where God is talking to Abram. I am God Almighty, walk before me and be blameless. But two separate names. So El Shaddai is a different name being used here. And so I wanted also to point out this word be blameless, as if you look at the Bible later on, and us Christians are very firm on the subject that it's impossible for a human being to be blameless, to be perfectly blameless. Every single human being has committed sin. There is only one exception, and that was Jesus Christ, who is God the Son, who took on human flesh, lived a human life perfectly without sin, died a criminal's death to save us from our sin. That's why it's so important for us to admit that we've got sin, because if we did not admit that truth, then we would be saying that we do not need Jesus to save us from our sin. Jesus' death is not effective, which that is a misunderstanding of God's nature, Jesus being God the Son. So what does God mean when he tells Abram, be blameless? One of the things, you've seen this tool already, I've used it already, but this is one of the reasons I like this this website, blb.org. We have it helps us to kind of get a sense of the original Hebrew meanings of the words instead of just the the limited English words. For instance, in the English Standard Version of the Bible, we're trying to translate the Bible from Hebrew, and sometimes there's multiple ways to understand the words. So we've got multiple translations, multiple versions of translations that tend to have the same idea, but it's sometimes good to see the different versions side by side to see the different facets of meaning that the word might have. So in English Standard Version, we've already read the word used as blameless. In the King James Version, which is getting used alongside these Hebrew words in the interlinear tool, that we see the word perfect. So that's even a little bit more broad than blameless. What does it mean to be perfect in this context? Hebrew word would have been tamim. So maybe if you speak Hebrew, you'll understand a little bit more about tamim than I would. I was looking through some of the examples that this gives us. We've already met Noah during this series. Noah was apparently blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God. Noah was at least seeking God in a time when everybody else was, every thought of every other person was evil, according to the Bible. Here's an interesting one. Your lamb shall be without blemish. A male, a year old, you may take it from the sheep or from the goats. So what is the word here that would be used for that tamim would be fitting into? Where does tamim fit into this verse? How about we pull this up in the interlinear? There's tamim, without blemish. So, okay, perfect. Blameless. But in this case, without blemish, which for livestock, especially, oh, I keep mixing that up. That is not the back button. For livestock, which would be used for sacrifice to God. So God is giving instructions on a sacrifice that's going to be made. I think maybe this would be when the first Passover took place. But God wanted sacrifices without blemish, tamim, perfect, blameless, which is an important concept later on when the deliverer that God has been promising ever since the third chapter of Genesis appears. That deliverer also needs to be tamim, blameless. And so in our verse here, hey, there's a shortcut. I'm going to take that. God is speaking to Abram and says, I want you to be blameless. That I may make my covenant between me and you and may multiply you greatly. Now, I think God understands human limitations. The book of Psalms says God knows that we are but dust. So God is certainly aware that we are limited, and he is definitely aware of what we call our sin nature. Every human being's tendency to sin. There is no human being who does not sin. The Bible says as much in multiple places. So God is aware that it's impossible for a human being to be perfect. I think this is something he is encouraging Abram to aspire toward. So why is Abram to aspire to blamelessness? That I may make my covenant between me and you and may multiply you greatly. Now, interestingly, a couple chapters ago in Genesis 15, which we touched on for a bit, God made a covenant with Abram. God told Abram to prepare animals. Abram split these animals down the middle and set them opposite from one another. And that was the way that the people of Abram's day used to make, or in their language, the word would have been like cut a covenant, make a covenant with one another. The parties of the covenant would walk between the severed pieces of these animals, and the idea was, if I break my promise, then may I be like these animals that are on either side of us. Except when God made this covenant with Abram and Abram prepared the animals, God put Abram to sleep, and had Abram see a vision that showed God walking between the animals. So this was a one-sided covenant that God arranged, God saying that he would fulfill his promise to Abram to give him offspring. And that Abram's offspring would wind up in another nation where they would be slaves, and then in the 4th generation they would come back to the land that God had promised them. So God has made a covenant. It's a one-sided covenant. God is going to keep this covenant, and Abram probably believes that God has kept the covenant as far as he can see, because obviously Abram is not going to live out to the 4th generation, but he's got Ishmael. And Ishmael, he knows God has promised to make Ishmael a multitude. So the covenant is complete, yes? But God says, "Be blameless that I may make my covenant between me and you and may multiply you greatly." So there's more to this covenant, isn't there? Then Abram fell on his face, and God said to him, "Behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of a multitude of nations." Now, when God first spoke to Abram in chapter 12, he said, "I am going to make you a great nation." Now he says, "I will make you a multitude of nations," so that's a little different. "No longer shall your name be called Abram," Abram means exalted father, "but your name shall be Abraham, father of a multitude. For I have made you the father of a multitude of nations." So this is why we know Abram as Abraham, and finally now I can start talking about him the way that I've always talked about him. We all are familiar with Father Abraham in Christian Sunday schools. Sometimes our little kids sing a song about Father Abraham. So yay, I get to use the familiar name for him now. "I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make you into nations, and kings shall come from you. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your offspring after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and to your offspring after you." Can you imagine this coming immediately after this dry period of 13 years? Abram has not heard a word from God for 13 years. And then God comes back and he says, "Not only am I going to be with you, I am going to be with every generation of your children after you. We are going to have a long-standing relationship, me and your line. And I will be God to you and to your offspring after you." There is going to be a long and lasting relationship here. "And I will give to you and to your offspring after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God." And God said to Abram, "As for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your offspring after you throughout their generations. This is my covenant which you shall keep, between me and you and your offspring after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. He who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised, every male throughout your generations, whether born in your house or bought with your money from any foreigner who is not of your offspring, both he who is born in your house and he who is bought with your money shall be circumcised. So shall my covenant be in your flesh, an everlasting covenant." And I think it's pretty common knowledge that the people of Israel, the Jewish people, still obey this covenant. Tell you what, I'll wrap up the last bit too, because this is important. "Any uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant." So that's important to bring in at the end of that. But I think it's common knowledge that this is still a mark of the covenant between God and the descendants of Abraham to this day. Particularly the descendants of not of Ishmael. I don't know what the if you're Islamic, if you're Muslim, I don't know what your relationship is with this command in the Bible. From what I understand, a lot of the Islamic peoples, if not all of them, but at least a lot of them, trace their ancestry back to Abraham through Ishmael. That's a number of them, so I'm not familiar with all the relationships. It would be great if you're more familiar with that. I'd love to hear from you. So definitely in the people of Israel, among the Jews, this is a thing. Perhaps some people who would call themselves of Israel would not have this, would not have gone through this process. Obviously, as a woman, I speak from a position of discomfort and ignorance. So I don't intend to get in depth on the subject of circumcision. I do think it's interesting. I was looking into the origin of the holiday Hanukkah years ago. So Hanukkah is the celebration of Israel's restoration after the nation had been under the command of someone named Antiochus Epiphanes. So a descendant of Alexander the Great, if I'm not mistaken, through the Seleucid dynasty that came out as descendants of Alexander the Great. And Antiochus Epiphanes tried to make Israel more Grecian. And there were many Jews apparently who were all for this, the Hellenic Jews, namely the Grecianized Jews who were all for this. But there were some Jewish people who clung to the Bible, to the scriptures that they were familiar with. They didn't want to abandon the law that God had given them, because this is after Israel had been exiled from Babylon, if I'm not mistaken. They didn't even have their own kings ruling over the land quite the same way. They were under the Seleucid dynasty. They didn't have the power over their own land, the sovereignty that they were used to. And so there was this group of Jewish people, and among them a family called the Maccabees. So if you go to the Apocrypha and you look at Maccabees 1 and I think maybe some of Maccabees 2, these two books, you'll see the accounts of the history of Hanukkah and what came after that. So Antiochus Epiphanes was trying to Grecianize the land, but there were some Jewish people who were saying that did not turn out for us last time. The last time that we tried to abandon our God and his law and become like the nations around us, that did not turn out well. So when Antiochus Epiphanes insisted that Jewish people sacrifice to Zeus, then there were some who accepted that those commands. There were some who wanted to sacrifice to Zeus because they were more Grecianized, and there were some who did not want to because they were loyal to their Israeli law given them by God in the Bible. And from what I understand, people died because they refused to give up the scriptures, they refused to give up the law, and they refused to become more Hellenic. They were punished with death. And so it was a motivating factor for others, the ones who were more Hellenic, the ones who were more Grecian. They would arrange even to have the historical text that I looked into when I was studying this. They had operations to reverse their circumcision. I do not know what is involved in that. I'm not going to dig into that. I just think it's interesting that apparently there would be grown people who would try to reverse this covenant that God is making with Abraham. Because I look at Genesis 17:14, any uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin shall be cut off from his people. And I'm going, but if they're getting circumcised when they're 8 days old, then what choice does this male have? Surely you would make that choice maybe as you're a grown-up once you realize, okay, there's been a breach in the evidence of the covenant in my body because my parents did not choose to circumcise me, right? It wasn't the 8-day-old baby's choice not to be circumcised. So I think it's interesting that it's laying the responsibility on the person who owns the body that's in question here. But I also think it's interesting there was a case in history, probably more than one case in history, but at least one case in history where people who had been circumcised sought to reverse that. So that's interesting. Also, I have absolutely, obviously, no personal knowledge of this, but I understand that if a child is going to be circumcised. 8 days old is the day that you want to aim for to get that done. Apparently the chemicals in the body are ideal to facilitate the best healing from that process. So I think that's interesting too, that the Bible is pinpointing what we now know medically to be the best time for the child. Naturally, this is God giving the covenant to Abraham. So if anyone would know how the human body works, it should be God. God would have all of the ins and outs figured out, where even us humans don't really know how our bodies work sometimes. And I do want to say to those of us who are not Israeli, to those of us who may not be familiar with the Bible, clearly I was raised with the Bible, so I'm kind of raised to be comfortable with the understanding of circumcision. But the Bible also acknowledges that there are cultures out there that this looks like mutilation. If you're familiar with what circumcision is, it seems like you are harming your body in order to respect this covenant. So what is that? It's off-putting to people of differing cultures. Is this a moral command for God to give to Abraham? So to the way that I tend to understand this, God created humanity. He knows again how our body is supposed to work. And so he gets to say what is moral for us to do and not to do. And this is not going to be the first time that we're going to have questions. There is a significant moral dilemma coming up in Genesis 22. So if you're familiar with what's in Genesis 22, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not going to spoil it yet. Maybe I'll spoil it in the future. But so the book of Genesis is not shying from the questions that would come up about God's morality here. Looking at this, my understanding is God created the human body. God knows the outcome of a command like this, and to my understanding, there is no lasting harm in this. So there is no if God says this is moral, then I'm going to side with God on this. But I think it's an interesting question worth looking into. How do we determine morality? So to dig in a little bit more on the philosophical side, as a Christian, I believe that God is the origin of morality. I believe that there would be no morality except for God. And if I try to imagine what a world would be like without God, so let's assume that all the humans still live in the world, but God didn't create us, we evolved or something, then how would I understand what is moral and what is not moral? I think we understand there are certain things that we humans tend to find unpleasant. There are things that we humans tend to universally find unpleasant. But what differentiates one unpleasantry as a moral unpleasantry and another unpleasantry as a preferential unpleasantry? So I don't know how well I can explain this tonight. If I have all the brain cells necessary to distinguish this, especially since I'm trying to get to the middle of chapter 18 tonight. But how do you make the distinction between what I want and what is morally imperative on you to give me? That kind of thing. Trying to imagine it without God, I don't see any way that it wouldn't be subjective, arbitrary, that I don't see a solid standard to help us choose who's going to be right and who's going to be wrong in a moral dispute. So there is a concept called Deus Ex Machina. If you're a story writer, and I definitely studied to be a story writer not that long ago. I've kind of set that aside now, but I have a lot of concepts from the past when I was studying how to write stories. This is not something you want to pull into your stories, because the words Deus Ex Machina means God out of the machine. Comes from the idea of Greek plays. I'm guessing in Greek plays they used to use machinery like a crane and pulley, that kind of thing, to have a character, a deity, descend on the stage from above when they needed a quick answer to a problem. You've got these characters who have been wrestling with this conflict on the stage for the entire play. They get to the end of the play, and a god descends and says, "You're right, you're wrong," and that's the end of the play. And that's not very satisfying, because what was the whole rest of the play for if the god could always have come down and given his ruling or her ruling on who was right and wrong in the play? There was a TV series, pretty popular, Touched by an Angel. I used to watch it when in my teens. And as I was studying stories and as I was watching this TV series, I learned to be dissatisfied with the way the episodes would always wrap up, because they'd start with this great hook, this question of this moral dilemma: who's right and who's wrong, and how do you deal with someone maybe who is, let's say there's this person who finds the politics of their community oppressive. They're just overwhelmed by, they're at the short end of the stick, basically. They are, there is no room for them in their society. They are being beaten down by the laws of their society, how people treat them, how people view them, and there is no way for them to get out of this. How do you reconstruct, restore? How do you reform? I think that's the word I'm looking for. How do you reform society so that it will treat the lowest and most downtrodden people well? And so this is a great question. I would love to see how these angels in this story, Touched by an Angel, work with the humans in the story to come to the solution to this. But always, right in the middle of the story, you find out something. The one politician who is like the most annoying character, who represents the whole government. Well, it's not the whole government. It's really just him. He's got a secret, and he's really weaker of an adversary than it would have been for them to have to reform the whole government. And so then the stories would just kind of crumble from that point on, because Deus Ex Machina, we have a secret suddenly injected into the story, and once the hero knows the secret, it's like a key that opens up the whole problem. Instead of actually solving the real problem, we're just going to get rid of this one character we don't like, and everything will be fine. So that can be done in modern stories too, even without direct reference to God. I mean, Touched by an Angel was referring to angels, but usually the Deus Ex Machina element wasn't, it was something like that, like a secret about an enemy's past or something like that, kind of simplified things, I thought. So you don't want that in a story, but I think in the issue of morality, where are you going to get morality from? There was a reason the Greeks liked this solution, and I think it's because when you're looking at morality, when you're trying to figure out who's right and who's wrong, how do you come to a solution? How do you avoid being arbitrary? Why is it that the weak should be preferred? I think a lot of cultures, I come from Western culture, I think Western culture says, well, what's moral is what helps the weak, or what's moral is what doesn't hurt anybody. Well, why? Who says? Let's say there's a conflict between two people, and one wants to do harm and the other is too weak to stop them. Who says that it's the weak one who would be preferred in that case? I understand Nietzsche, and I haven't read Nietzsche's works, but I've heard about them secondhand. I understand he would argue that just because you're weak, too weak to do evil, doesn't mean that you're more moral. And I think I would agree with that, I think that the reason that God is so harsh with our sins, even though we would say, I don't hurt a fly. Maybe I think about hurting a fly, but I don't hurt a fly. Why is God angry with me? Well, it's because God knows that you don't hurt a fly because you're afraid of the consequences of doing harm. But the temptations that are in our hearts, the things that we want, the things that we long for that are evil, are an indication that if there were no consequences, then we would pursue that evil. We would go ahead and do it. I kind of think that's why the first sin after Adam and Eve ate the fruit in the garden, the first sin mentioned in the Bible is Cain committing outright brutal murder against Abel. Why did it escalate so fast? It was just eating a fruit at first, and now it's Cain murdering his brother. I wonder if the reason it was that brutal, that overt, was because humanity was so young. Cain had not learned to think about the consequences of his actions yet. Maybe Adam and Eve would have realized, yeah, sin has consequences. We know because we got kicked out of Eden. But Cain may not have had that realization. So he's angry at his brother. He's going to kill his brother. That's the thought processing. Then God had to have a conversation with him saying, there are consequences to this. So let's see. When we're dealing with the issue of morality, the reason I bring up Deus Ex Machina, it's a negative thing in stories, but I think it's really the only solution to the moral question. How do we distinguish who gets preferential treatment in moral questions, the weak or the strong, the harmless or the harmful? We look back to the nature of God, and based on the Bible, which I take to be my standard of truth, there's only one God, so that simplifies things. We don't have multiple gods bickering with each other. It's one God who is over everything else. And his nature is the way that things work morally. So, of course, the nature of God is going to decide who he's going to prefer or punish in moral questions. So, thankfully, our God is one who does feel for the weak and who does not prefer the haughty or the cruel. So, I'm grateful for the moral God we've got. If he were anything less than perfectly moral, I don't think we would exist at all. I think we'd have crumbled as a creation long ago. But God does make this stipulation with Abraham that definitely sets Abraham's people aside from all the other nations, definitely distinguishes them from all the other nations. And God said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, well, where does she figure into this, right? Because she saw that God was not allowing her to bear a child, so Hagar's in the covenant. Hagar's the one you're going to get your offspring from, right? When God said you're going to have offspring and they're going to be slaves of another nation and then they're going to come back here, he wasn't talking about Sarai because she couldn't bear children. And she's saying God's hand has been against me in that area, so it's not me. It must be talking about Ishmael. Of course, by the point that God was making this specific covenant with Abram, Ishmael had not been born yet. And that's her decision based on how she felt she fit into God's covenant or felt she didn't fit into God's covenant is the reason Ishmael came to exist in the first place. But God said, Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. Now, from what I understand, these are both kind of similar names. Sarai and Sarah mean princess. So there's a change in her name. I'm not sure if there's a difference in meaning. Maybe someone who speaks better Hebrew than I do could elaborate. But God's making a distinction in Sarah also. God is singling out Sarah. Why? I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she shall become nations. Kings of people shall come from her. Then Abram fell on his face and laughed and said to himself, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? So I feel like there's a lot of emotional baggage behind this section, and I did cover it, I think last week. Tried to relay some of it today. Sarah feeling like God has specifically singled her out of the covenant. She is specifically not going to give Abram a son, because otherwise wouldn't God have allowed her to do it when she was younger, maybe when she was 30, when most people were having kids around this time, and since then she had 40, 50 years to have a child, and by the time Abram is 86 years old, she's not had a child yet. She's 76 by that point. And if God were going to let me have a kid for you, he would have done it by now. Take Hagar. But now God is specifically singling out Sarah and saying she will bear your son. And Abram has this reaction. Of course, I'm sure he and Sarai were intimately familiar with each other's longing to bring up the next generation. Shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? They've already given up on this. This is a joke. Basically, they long ago decided that for Sarah to give Abraham a child was a joke. And Abraham said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. God said, no, but Sarah, your wife, will bear you a son, and you will call his name Isaac, which means he laughs. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. God's basically telling Abram and Sarah, you thought this was a joke? Your son is going to be named Laughter. This is going to be the outcome of the joke. It's going to bring you laughter, just like it's doing today. Just like Abram's falling on his face and laughing today. As for Ishmael, I have heard you, which is funny also because Ishmael means, let's see, I want to make sure I get that translation right. I know the footnote is over here. God hears. Okay. So as for Ishmael, I have heard you. God's in rare form today with wordplay. Let's see. It's down here. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and multiply him greatly. He shall father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. Which I think is interesting, because one of Abraham's descendants had 12 sons, who became the 12 tribes of Israel. But Ishmael, of course, is a different son, and he gets 12 princes too, so that's interesting to me. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear you at this time next year. When he had finished talking with him, God went up from Abraham. So, God's just told a great joke to Abraham. How does Abraham respond to this covenant that God has said that he will establish for Abraham? Then Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all those born in his house, or bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and he circumcised the flesh of their foreskins that very day, as God had said to him. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, and Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. That very day Abraham and his son Ishmael were circumcised, and all the men of his house, those born in the house and those bought with money from a foreigner, were circumcised with him. So, interesting also that God is including even the foreigners, the slaves that are in Abraham's house in this covenant. There's a part of me that's curious what the effects on future generations of that were. Naturally, people were able to come into Israel and choose to be converted into Judaism. So this establishes the practice for that. And I do try to be sensitive. I know in modern culture, modern Western culture especially, we don't look kindly on slavery. So I do recognize that Abraham was part of a different culture, and where Abraham loved Sarah so much that he did not choose another wife. She had to choose another alternative for him. And that doesn't absolve Abraham from agreeing to it, by the way. I think Abraham was still at fault for Hagar's role in the situation here. I don't see that as a positive. While Abraham avoided that aspect of his culture as far as he did up until Sarah convinced him. I'm going to get these names mixed up again, aren't I? I just got used to calling them Abram and Sarai. Anyway, I do think that slavery was something that he had come to accept and acknowledge, and that's unfortunate to me from a modern Western perspective. And having the benefit of looking over the whole Bible, Abraham would not have had any of the Bible at this time in his life. None of it had been written yet. I have had the benefit of studying the Old Testament and the New Testament and seeing how God interacted with people. I think last week I was mentioning the people who have been chosen in Scripture up until this point. God has always chosen a man married to a woman. Adam and Eve, a man, a woman. Noah and Noah's children, each of them was a man with a woman, a wife. Abraham, when God chose him, he was married to Sarai, and that was it. Abraham, Sarah. So, Abraham does go through with the covenant that God told him to keep before. In Genesis chapter 15, God was making a one-sided covenant where God was walking through the pieces of the animals. In this case, God is making a two-sided covenant, a bilateral covenant. Abraham has a responsibility also, and Abraham keeps his end of the covenant. So that's interesting. And we're going to go on to the next scene after Abraham, immediately after Abraham obeys this covenant. The next chapter, and the Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre as he sat at the door of his tent in the heat of the day. We already know he was living by these oaks, or this word says terebinths, so depending on how they want to translate that word. There were these trees that were owned by a man who was an Amorite. This man's name was Mamre. He was one of Abram's friends. And we've met Mamre and his brothers previously in Genesis chapter 14. So this is where Abram had set up his tents. I say tents because Abraham had a large household. When he went to rescue Lot, he had 318 men in his household. So I'm sure it wasn't just one tent. I'm sure that he probably had a tent city that represented his household, all of the shepherds that were herding his flocks and those kinds of things. But he's obviously got one to himself. The Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre. He lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing in front of him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the earth and said, "O Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant." Now I'm kind of curious how much Abraham recognized the Lord, because we've heard the Lord speak to Abraham. I don't know if we have seen Abraham see the Lord, if the Lord has appeared to Abraham before. I'm just checking to see if there's any indication in the previous chapter. The Lord said to him, God said to him. We did have the vision where God walked through the animal pieces, but the way that God presented himself in the vision, it was like a torch and a fire bowl, basically, or a fire pot. So it wasn't a person. It was these objects that surely couldn't pass through these pieces on their own impetus. So there was, I'm imagining it's like someone's invisible holding these objects. Now Abraham is looking and he sees 3 men, and they inspire this reaction from him. And from what I understand, hospitality is really big in the Middle East. I'm curious if it goes to this extent. I think that just coming from my Western perspective, I don't think this is the kind of behavior you show strangers, and I'll point that out in a bit. I'm curious about this word too. Okay, oh Lord or my Lord. So I don't know if that's commonly how you would address a stranger in that culture. Maybe it would be. Maybe you'd see someone who is strange coming to you. You'd want to show them hospitality. You'd call them Lord, but it just seems strange to me. Went to meet them, bowed himself to the earth, said, "O Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought, and wash off your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree, while I bring a morsel of bread, that you may refresh yourselves, and after that you may pass on, since you have come to your servant." So they said, "Do as you have said." And Abraham went quickly to the tent to Sarah and said, "Quick, 3 seahs of fine flour, knead it and make cakes." So, I can't visualize those measures, so I'll not chase down that footnote. But this is going to be a little bit of a process. I recognize sometimes in my family, my dad kind of has this idea that things happen. Mom will make things happen. Things will kind of happen on their own, and then but she's aware of all of the difficulties of managing the household, of cooking the food, and she's aware of the logistics. So for instance, if we're planning a special event like Thanksgiving is coming up soon, so we've got family plans around the celebration of Thanksgiving, we might be deciding when are we going to have the dinner, and depending on Thanksgiving is a pretty big celebration, so let me back it down to say Memorial Day. If it's Memorial Day, Dad's planning on barbecuing. Mom's going, "When do you want me to have the meat ready for you to barbecue?" "Oh, whenever. We can do it earlier, we can do it later." And Mom's going, "We need to have a specific time so that I can have it ready for you, because I'm going to have to be preparing it before you're ready to barbecue it." So I bring that up because I don't know. I imagine, I would like to think that Abraham isn't thinking that some bread is going to magic itself up immediately. I'm thinking he knows it's a process. Knead it and make cakes. He knows there's some process to making bread. So this is going to take a little bit of time to cook the bread. And Abraham ran to the herd. Yeah, so Abraham is more aware than I would be in this situation. Abraham ran to the herd and took a calf, tender and good, and gave it to a young man who prepared it quickly. So Abraham promised these 3 men bread. That was all he promised them. But he goes and finds a calf, and not just any calf, a tender calf, a good calf. And he's giving it to one of his servants to butcher, to cook. So this seems like it's a process. Is that what you do for a stranger? If you see someone passing by your house, and even in a Middle Eastern culture, I don't know if hospitality would have been any greater during this time in Abraham's era, but this just seems like a lot for someone you've never seen before, to call them my Lord, to prepare to take your best calf and have them butchered, to have these cakes baked fresh from the oven for them. Then he took curds and milk and the calf that he had prepared and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree while they ate. Abraham is not even eating. It seems like he's taking on the demeanor of one of the servants himself. He's there to serve them as they eat. So I am ignorant about the cultural distinctions, both in geography and in time, between us and Abraham, but this just seems, I'm thinking that Abraham knows who he's dealing with. Maybe he hasn't seen God physically, but I think he's had enough interactions with God that he knows this is the person who he has been interacting with. And I think that's really precious, given that Abraham hasn't heard from God in 13 years, except for a little while before. And I'm kind of curious how how much Abraham has conveyed to Sarah. Obviously, he's had to convey something because she's called Sarah now. Why is he calling her Sarah instead of Sarai? And they've gone through this circumcision ritual, so I wonder how much of that Abraham had to explain to Sarah. But I'll get into why I have questions about how much he's communicated with her in a minute. So these, by the way, these men, God is one of these men. I do not think that this is the Trinity because of what's coming later. Maybe I'll spell that out later. So I think this is God and a couple angels that are with him. That's my personal opinion of this passage. God and these angels are sitting, waiting for all of this food to be prepared, taking the time to sit there, and as Abraham is waiting for his servant to prepare the food, waiting for Sarah to prepare the food, I just kind of wonder what the conversation was like, because I can't imagine that Abraham is doing his best to be hospitable to God, who has had these rich discussions with him up until this point. The last two conversations have been really rich discussions. I can't imagine he's just standing there silently staring at them while it's taking what has to be a considerable length of time to butcher a calf to make the bread. So we know a little bit of the discussion, at least while they ate, which, by the way, does God need to eat? The Bible says God does not need to eat. It says that if God were hungry, he wouldn't tell his people that he was hungry because he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. But the idea is basically that God isn't hungry. God doesn't need to eat. So it's even, to me, it's even a special gesture that God is consuming the food that Abraham gives him. The food that God created, by the way. God gave life to that calf, and God caused that wheat for the bread to grow from the ground. And God is accepting this little gift that Abraham, who is also the product of God's hand, is offering to him. The fact that God is accepting this, that it is, that he is consuming it. When a human consumes food, it becomes a part of us. So I don't know how it works when God consumes food, but I think the idea is there. God is accepting this gift that Abraham has made, and it is symbolically becoming part of God. Not that God needs anything. I don't think that it actually became a part of God's being. So a mystery I'm going to have to ask him about in heaven sometime. But I think the idea here is God is, by receiving this gift from Abraham, he is giving Abraham the gift. God allowing himself to be served is giving someone who so desperately wants to serve him the opportunity to do so. So they said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" And he said, "She's in the tent." The Lord said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, shall have a son." And Sarah was listening at the tent door behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years. The way of women had ceased to be with Sarah, so it was pretty clear she was not going to have a son, naturally. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "After I am worn out and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure?" And that's why I'm wondering, how much of the conversation before did Abraham actually tell Sarah? Because she's acting like she's heard this for the first time. The Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, shall I indeed bear a child now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return to you about this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son." But Sarah denied it, saying, "I did not laugh," for she was afraid. He said, "No, but you did laugh." I think it's interesting also, when Abraham laughs, God says, you're going to call him Isaac. You're going to call him, he laughs. And now, as Sarah is laughing, God is making a point of saying Sarah is laughing too. So there's this, why after all of these years, why was Why did God restrain Sarah from having a son for all of these years? Why couldn't God have allowed Sarah to have a son at 30? For one thing, look at the nature of the relationship that God has had with Abraham and with Sarah now over all of the time that they've been waiting. I heard a story, I think it's like a folk story. I feel like I've heard that it's a story that Jewish people tell to kind of convey why you may not receive your prayers from God immediately. And the story is about this king who has 2 sons. And the king kind of has some favoritism. He likes one son better than another. And so when his least liked son comes into the throne room and says, "Father, may I have the horse? I'd like to take it out for a ride." The father says, "Oh yeah, sure, go ahead." And when the liked son comes into the room and says, "Father, I'd like to take a horse out from the stable. Can I take a horse out for a ride?" The father says, "Son, how are you doing? Talk to me first before we settle this. I want to know how you're doing. I want to know about your studies. I want to know how your sword lessons have been going." And the king will purposely deny the request of his favorite son, not because he doesn't want to give the son his request, but because he wants to develop that relationship first. If he were not interested in the relationship, then he would just let the son go like the other one. So I'm not sure that it's necessarily the most accurate way that God, if God is withholding the answer to your prayer, I'm not sure that that is the answer, the 100% true answer, for the reason that God is doing that. I think there are maybe more than one, but I think a benefit of God holding back this thing that was on Abraham's and Sarah's heart is that God has had this opportunity to develop a relationship with Abraham and Sarah. There's been these multiple conversations. Abraham, by coming to know God, was willing to give up 1/10 of his wealth to God's priest, Melchizedek, was willing to declare his loyalty to God. Abraham has performed the covenant that God has laid on him, again declaring his loyalty to God. Abraham is pleased to serve God here. The other benefit that I see, if Sarah had had a child when she was 30, where would the laughter have been? It would have just been a course of nature. Because God has allowed Abraham and Sarah to wait this long, to the point where they have given up. Now he is making the promise, and Sarah can laugh at the fulfillment that's coming. I think Sarah at this point doesn't quite believe what is happening, but certainly she has they will have this memory. Their son will be named Isaac, and they will remember that God brought us to laughter after all of the time that we have been waiting, and it has been worth it. And as I am talking, I am trying to keep my my train of thought, because I just realized I have had my stream in unlisted mode for all this time. So let me see if I can correct that. Just a moment. I'm trying to see if there is a quick way to manage this on OBS. I don't think so. So I'm going to do a little bit of adjustment off screen here. Okay, so we are setting this. Yep, it's unlisted, but it's public now. Publish. There we go. So now people can discover the stream. Excellent. And where was I? Right at the last verse. We're not going to linger very long on this last verse. This is going to kind of segue into the next week's segment. Then the men set out from there, and they looked down towards Sodom. and Abraham went with them to set them on their way. So if you know much about the Bible, you know that we're getting into, well, you know that Sodom is a very critical place in the Bible. And even culturally nowadays, I think there's a lot of people who maybe don't read the Bible themselves, but are familiar with the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. So the next week is actually going to get into that story. I'm going to need to do some looking ahead and see how far we're going to get through that, because I suspect that may be a longer segment of the Bible than we tend to read. But I don't know. We've been through a chapter and a half, and I've done some skipping around today, so we'll see. The one thing that I wanted to mention about why I think it was God and a pair of angels rather than the three members of the Trinity visiting Abraham. Clearly, it says that the Lord appeared to him, so the Lord is involved. And then they've had this conversation. These visitors have eaten. And so it says the men set out from there. And then when we get into the story of Sodom, I think it's actually the next chapter. It says 2 angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. Lot treats these angels like human beings, so I don't think he perceives them as God's messengers. He perceives them as human beings. And the word angel here, angel is actually a Greek word that means messenger. And I pointed out in a previous stream, the word angel could mean could carry the sense of just messenger. There is the messenger sense used of humans also in the Bible. Humans can be called angels in the Bible also, or actually in Hebrew, the word is malak, I believe, malak. In fact, there is a prophet. There's a book in the Bible called Malachi. So I think that carries the idea of being a messenger. Malachi would be a name that would have to do with the concept of being a messenger. So for the previous chapter to say there were 3 men, and then for 2 messengers to come to Sodom, I think it's intentionally ambiguous. God is coming in the appearance of a man in this one. In fact, I believe that this could well be God the Son, Jesus. I've mentioned before how Christians believe, some of us believe that appearances like this are what we call a theophany, where it would be Jesus appearing on earth before receiving a human form, but as God, he is timeless. And so he has a physical form that he appears to man on earth in. And so if you see a reference to the angel of the Lord, in other words, the messenger of the Lord, or in this case, it's a little bit more clear, this is the Lord, this is God who is visiting Abraham, could well be God the Son, Jesus, before Jesus was born to Mary. Being God the Son, he has the ability to manifest before being born as a human being. So that's a possibility. It's not a hill that I would die on, but certainly seems like a possibility for here. So I'm going to go ahead and have another drink. Stop talking for a moment. As a streamer, you don't really want to stop talking because... okay, there we go. I'm just checking. I hit something on the keyboard. I don't think it has offset my settings. So I'll leave that. We're going to switch to the game segment of the stream, and I'll play maybe a day or two of My Time at Portia. While we're in there, let me get myself in order here. I can switch to the game scene. Already have it kind of up. My character has been running around, well, not running around for a bit, but she's gotten out of bed at least, so we don't have to wait too long for that. How about I bring us the My Time at Portia audio and take off the music from Spotify. There we go. And in fact, I probably better close Spotify because I can still hear that music. and we'll get into the game. And I feel like I interrupted myself saying something. Got into a topic and then got distracted because I bumped a button. So, okay, so got my builder license here. I was wondering whether I had reached a level that put some more requirements on me, but I don't think so yet. Pigments are an important part of decorating your yard. They can be made in the blender. I did not know that. And these loading screens tend to take a little while, so we'll see how long this one takes. Trying to think of what I had been saying. I think it's probably good and lost since I'm now in the world of the game. I think I needed these bricks, so that's good. Can I build this? Any more of this now that I have those bricks? Yes. So let me pick those up. And I need some bronze plates, so I've got one extra brick. I also need to figure out what my missions for the day are. I'm definitely working on that bridge. And then I do have a commission to make some charcoal. 8 of them. Okay. Oh yeah, I've got my quests off to the side also. What's flying up there? Huh. I don't remember seeing that before. So charcoal, I think is going to come from here. Yes. I've got 10 wood, so I could get 8 of that. How about I back it down a couple? There we go. That'll be ready in 8 hours, which in this game is 8 minutes. And then, let's see, I'm seeing something quest-like in this direction. Is that going to be the person I need to bring the charcoal to? I want to say that my commission recipient is also named Isaac. Oh, well here's Janko. What does he want?
Hey!
Hey!
My practice sword is getting worn. I need a new one for my morning exercise. Have at it.
As long as it doesn't need a civil furnace, it probably does. Need to craft a bronze sword. I think I've got bronze tools, so I think I'll be fine. I think I won't need that civil furnace. There's a part of me that's still trying to get to whatever that topic was that I've forgotten. I can't keep conversation up and think about that at the same time, unfortunately. I know I had been talking about the theophany. Yeah, see, I can't even play the game, can't think through what it is what the moves are that I'm trying to do. Can I get a sword from here? Bronze sword? I've got enough bronze bars. I've got an upgrade kit, which makes me wonder what I was going to use it for. And I need a practice sword, which I do now. No? Oh, because I've already got well, hold on. Do I have a bronze sword in my... I don't have any sword in my inventory. Interesting. So I need to make a practice sword. I can make a practice sword. That'll be fine. Okay. And the bronze sword. Oh, good. I can get that done. Okay, the charcoal is still at work here. And then I'll need to make those bronze plates so I can finish the bridge. Where did Janko go? He's in his restaurant. He runs this place.
Now this takes me back to my younger days. when I was receiving my first sword. Great work. Very balanced.
Okay. Oh, he gave me some food. Smoked fish roll. Didn't give me his old sword, though. I feel like that would have been useful for fighting enemies, but at least I know how to make a bronze one. And now that I've used up those bronze bars on his sword, I probably have to come up with more. Hello, Emily.
Hey! They say you make the most progress in the spring. I gotta work hard and make more healthy food than last year. See you!
Okay. So let's see. The charcoal is still at work. I'll go ahead and take those. I feel like I took some earlier, so I should have 3. Nope, I've just got the 2 pieces. Making memories that don't exist. And I'm not sure if I can take another commission since I've got that one. I'll double check. No, what I wanted to do was check on the bronze plates. So I need 3 of those. Book. So I think this is what I'm working on. I need copper ore and tin ore. And in order to make 3 bronze plates... Nope, no bronze plates in there. There we go. So that means 9 bronze bars total. So then my question is, do I have the copper? I guess I only need 8 then. Do I have the copper and the tin? I've got copper. Not all of the copper I need though. Is that tin? Yeah. But the furnace is at work. So I'll probably go mining, see if I can get some more copper and tin. Then again, do any of these metals come out of here? Oh. Should press the right buttons. There we go. If anything, I might get marble. I don't think I'm going to get ores. So, oh, copper and tin. Look at that. But I might get more if I head up to the mine here. For a weekly pass. Let's go ahead. Every Portia resident has his or her own preferred gift. Figuring these out can help you gain a better relationship with that person faster. I'm not a very social person. I don't tend to spend a lot of time on the gifts, unfortunately. Let's see, I've got... Got my headlamp. Okay. So stone, sand, and soil. I am getting some copper out of this, so that's good. I already had some tin, so I may not need to dig that far. I think the reddish terrain is probably what's giving me the copper. Oh, got a data disk. Okay, so how is my inventory so far? 38 versus 40. And then the bronze bar. I forget how much I needed. do have a rusty iron pipe. I wonder if that counts as a weapon or not. Let me check my inventory here. Yep, attack 8. So that's why I'm holding that. Good to know. Who needs a bronze sword? The annual Portia Land Run race takes place on the 12th and 13th days. Did it say autumn? I guess I'll have to train for that. That was a fast loading screen. Yep, gotta grab that. And apparently I didn't get it all. Okay. Back home. That looks like all the charcoal. No, I've run out of fuel. This wet. But my problem is, and apparently no, I've got wood in inventory. Okay, there we go. So one more, taking 54 seconds. Not quite sure what to do for the half a minute that I'm waiting. Nearly there. Six, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There we go. And now I can load in what I need for the bronze bars. So that's going to take a day, so I'm going to have to wait until I fall asleep and wake up. And then on the calendar today, it's Saturday. They host meetings, the mayor hosts meetings every Sunday, so I was wondering, maybe I'll make it to one of those. Sometimes he makes useful announcements and sometimes he doesn't, so we'll see how that turns out. I think my charcoal commission is done, so I can see if I can pick up another one. Okay. No commissions offered by the Commerce Guild over the weekend. Am I supposed to turn it into the person directly? I guess that makes more sense. Nearly evening, but there's Isaac, and he's got a question mark. So, yep. Commerce Commission. A valiant effort. He's not the most encouraging fella, but at least he pays me goals. Oh, there's my rival. Where are you off to? Dinner? Going to eat? This is the hot spot for the evening.
Hey! Watching what trends are in each year is kind of like a hobby for me.
Does she say anything else interesting?
Watching what trends are in each year is...
Okay, and I don't know what kind of gift she gets.
Hi. Yes? I'm in a hurry to buy some food for Miss Ginger. Good day.
Oh, is this where you get food? You don't have grocery store?
Whoever said goals couldn't solve all your problems obviously didn't have enough goals.
Well... not quite sure what I think of that logic.
Hi! Portia looks pretty good in the spring. Maybe it's not too bad here.
Why are you in doubt? She's the lead journalist in town. Oops, sorry.
Hi! If you work hard and never give up, you'll be well off in no time at all.
Okay. course, I think he runs the Commerce Guild, so of course he wants me to work hard and do commissions for him.
Hi. Look at my glowing radiance. Exercise makes you healthy. You need to keep balance between work and life.
Uh-huh. Oh, and there's the mayor.
Hello. My sweet Ginger is waiting for me to have dinner. I need to head home right after I finish the work. Not a minute's delay.
Don't you work at the mayor's office? So why aren't you either here or there? So Russo is the mayor's butler. He's here for food, apparently. The mayor is on his way home for dinner, but he's here at the restaurant. I'm not sure I get what's going on here. And this is a kind of game room, I guess. I don't really feel like spending money on the games. Well, maybe I'll shoot balloons. Aim the crosshair, press the assigned button. Okay. Whoop. Got it. There's a little bit of delay between when you click and when it hits. Yeah, my aim is terrible. Says success. Low bar. Let's see, if I play again, I'll probably have to spend some more goals, huh? Let's try it. Yeah, I paid some more. There, got it. This will be my last run. Getting better. I don't know if I want to hit those pre-fertilizer ones. Okay, I'm not playing again, but I'm getting better. And I got a night badge, whatever's that worth. Whatever that's worth. Badge exchange. So I have what? I can't tell how to tell how many night badges I have. Oh, 14. There we go. So I could get some food. What is that? Meatballs and vegetable soup? I think I'll save them. Anything else on the next screen? Nothing but expensive stuff. Okay. And there's Albert.
Hi. I worked hard for this. Money is a good thing, other than reinvesting. I just want to have fun with it.
Okay, he's the local construction fella. Oh, and there's Isaac again. What you doing, Isaac? Psyche?
Life is time, so enjoy your time in Portia, but don't waste mine.
Okay. How about I go to bed and then maybe by morning I'll have that those bronze bars ready. I'll just make sure that the furnace is clear. I guess if they're not taking commissions over the weekend, there won't be any for Sunday either. So I can focus on getting that bridge built. Raining. There's no mail. There's still 13 hours worth of work waiting there. And maybe I can get some of those plates in the works. We're getting one anyway. this, I guess, is taking 2 hours. Yeah. I'm thinking of going back into the mine again. If I'm going... Okay, the food gives a defense buff. I'm looking for something that'll give me stamina. What's this? Cooking master. Small item artwork can be placed in a museum. But I'm also wondering if it would teach me anything about cooking. So let's see. Okay, none of those opens it. And I'm not seeing any use from that, so maybe I can take it over to the research station. That's the closest thing to a museum that I can think of. Okay. Apricot juice. These will unlock. I can pay goals for them. I've got enough to unlock 1 row of inventory. That's interesting. Okay, so I have an old thermos piece. I'm just checking to see if I have anything similar. I can put those on that stack. There's another old thermos piece, but I'm not sure. Okay, these are both old thermos piece 1. Okay. So maybe I'll find something else in the... Oh, he's got a cute umbrella hat. Doesn't help the rest of him stay dry. Oh, everybody's wearing those hats, huh?
Hi. My mom makes all of our clothes. She's so talented.
You make your hat, too?
Bye. Hi. I want to make a snow angel, but I'll get my dress dirty.
Especially if it rains. Oh, I see. Everyone's going to church because it's Sunday.
Hi. I don't want to go to school. Don't want to go. Don't want to go. I don't want to go to school.
Don't worry about that.
See you.
It's not a school day. I've been to the services once before, but I'll go ahead and go again because I think it's interesting the tension that they create in the game. They've got a kind of religion versus science tension going here. I guess Minister Lee hasn't started preaching yet. Can I sit down? No?
The Commerce Guild is always busy, but I feel like I'm taking part in the telesis of the world.
Telesis is a word they use here. I think it's the idea of making things better. It's a kind of a strange word, but I think that in Greek there's the word telos, which means not like telesis, but T-E-L-O-S, if I'm remembering properly, the transliteration of it. So, I'm curious why they're using the word telesis here. Telos in Greek, I believe, has the idea of maturity, kind of like how that word perfection, blameless, that we saw before was in Hebrew. Then maturity, perfection, completion would be the idea of telos, if I'm not mistaken. So, interesting that they're using the word telesis here. Oh, okay, he says so much you have to stand way back to be able to see it or something. Because I feel like I ought to be seeing him giving speech bubbles, but... Okay, so... he's kind of the religious leader, Minister Lee up there. And the sense in which he is religious, he remembers a past where everything was dark. And then there was someone who rescued society, moved away the darkness, drove away the darkness, and now everything's better, but we must stay away from technology because apparently that's what caused the darkness. So definitely a strong, if you're religious, you're anti-science kind of sense here. Not something I relate to. I mean, I'm using a computer to play computer games while I'm talking about God, so it doesn't quite make sense to me, but in the nature of the story, since the folks come from this dark past, I can see the way the story is arranged, I can see how that is. Arlo, are you not a churchgoer?
Hello! Working and training outside when it's raining requires extra attention. It could be slippery. See ya!
Yeah. I guess somebody from the Civic Guild has to make sure that nobody's causing trouble while everyone's at church. And then I think I've seen... oh, and there's Albert. Okay. I think I've seen... yeah, there's Grandma Sophie running her farm. So not everyone in the town is church going. Got a bronze bar. Oh, fuel's depleted already. Okay, now I've got that all set. Got 8 more hours of that. And I can craft another bronze plate. So once I have the third one, then we'll be fine. I think I'll put this in my chest for now. Put that away. And I'll see if I can do some mining for the next few minutes. Maybe I'll do one more day after this. Because then maybe I'll get that bit of the bridge done and there's at least some progress for the stream. Interestingly, the church is parked right on top of the first place that you find technology. Sparkling objects in the world are resources that can be gathered. Okay. And then this is a temporary store. So I guess you can sell ores that you pick up. Well, that's interesting. Sell or buy. You can sell stuff and you can buy ores. Huh. Okay, looks like that's where I was looking for relics earlier. I can scan and see if I can spot any. There's one. We're starting to get some signals. So now that marks the spot, I can focus on digging. Oh. Oh, I don't have my pickaxe. That's much. What's wrong? Got some power stones, that's important. That's what runs the cutter. And I am not seeing any... Oh, there's a relic. I saw a spot. Where did it go? And then, there we go. Oh, I forgot to lock it on it. There we go. Now I like when I'm doing the gameplay to have something to talk about. Maybe not as meaningful as my opening segment, but I prefer to have something worth saying even while I'm playing the game. But the issue with the games is that I tend to lose my train of thought, obviously, once I get started playing. And then I also and I've mentioned this multiple times during streams also, I kind of hope that during the Bible segment, certainly we could discuss let's see, meaningful subjects there, probably more philosophical subjects, or structural dimension theory was the name of the book I just picked up, so that's why I trailed off and got distracted. So maybe that can go to the museum also, or the research center. Not quite sure where I would find a museum. Anyway, I kind of hope that the beginning segment, we might be able to talk about the more philosophical stuff, and then if we had anything lighter that we wanted to talk about, then the game would be a good time to discuss that. I don't quite know for certain how I want... I mean, streams are pretty hard to structure just in general. Especially the more viewers a stream has, I think, the less structure there's going to be, because you do want to be engaging with those viewers, meet them where they are, and I think a lot of streams are kind of geared for entertainment. I don't quite see myself as an entertainer, so hopefully if we can talk about stuff that's head-scratching, that will be engaging enough anyway. So currently, while there's not a lot to structure the time that I've got a series that I'm doing going through the Bible, but I also like the idea of conversations, and I think there are things that I may not realize I've got wrong, beliefs that I may not realize I need to reevaluate unless I get a chance to talk to people who believe differently from me. So I think that's I think it's very hard to have an unbiased analysis of where you are if you're not socializing with other people. But how that actually plays out in the stream as it develops, then I'm not quite sure. That the stream used to be just me playing games and trying to talk around the games. Did I just connect with another tunnel? Huh. Okay, I connected with the tunnel I was in and started, I guess. I'm a little confused. It's getting late. I'm probably late for the mayor's meeting. Let's see if I can make it. was thinking I could take a shortcut here, but just before I made the jump, I realized I didn't have the jetpack. Looks like the meeting is over. Everyone's dispersing. Did I miss anything important?
Hey! My sweet Ginger is waiting for me to have dinner.
Dinner, yeah.
Goodbye!
So I'll probably have to see the meeting next Sunday in-game. I believe those meetings get held on Sundays. And then I've got my bronze bars, so I can get started. Oh, and I've got a bronze plate. But no space in my inventory. Got it. Well, I should have space now, right? Okay, I have a bronze plate. Where's the other one? Oh, put it in here. I think I put something like a bronze plate in here. There we go. I'm trying to see if I happen to have any matching pieces. Got 2 monument model pieces out of 4. But I'm not seeing any other matches. So okay. I've got these lenses. I don't remember if they get used for anything. I'm sure I can probably carve them into something. Craft them into something. So this will take another hour. I'll just go to sleep. We'll get that bridge built. I used to play games and try to talk my way through them, and then I decided that I wanted to do this series going through the Bible. That takes a little bit more preparation. I at least need to read the passage ahead of time and kind of have an idea of what I want to talk about while addressing the passage. I was noticing the watermelon on my little map down there. I wonder if that means it's summer now. Hi, your workshop was ranked number 5 in the workshop rankings last month. Being last means there's only one way to go, and that is up. Yeah, because I didn't catch a lot of commissions, right? But I did fulfill Isaac's commission, and I can get commissions today, so that's good. Let me see if I can quickly fill in this this bridge piece. Gotta be holding on to it while I set it up. There we go. And I can retrieve this, right? I'll march this down to where the bridge is. I think this is the bridge body part of my quest, and now I have to make another bridge head for the other side. And then we'll be done with that. See how long it takes to install this. Okay, not long. Making progress.
Hi!
Hi.
That Starlight Island you see out there on the horizon is a great place to fish. See you.
So is that the island he's talking about? With the big building? And that's one of our public transportation systems, but I think is faster to run. For a while I kind of had my segment at the beginning where I would talk, and I tried to be flexible about that segment, and like I say, I'm still interested in conversations during that segment. And this is that fellow that drove the darkness away, apparently. But definitely the gameplay segment is less structured, so it might be easier for me to have good conversations during this time, as long as I can keep my thoughts together. So 3 shell necklaces, or 2 grinders. That's a commission limit of 10 days. And 5 rope. I think I should be able to make grinders. Let's try that, and hopefully I don't shoot myself in the foot. At least the workbench is open, so maybe I'll find enough space if I need the assembly station. That's what I'm referring to, that big, where we had the bridge. Yep, needs the assembly station. So, old parts, I've got plenty of old parts, I've got plenty of copper. Got stone. Copper bar, grinding stone, and where do I get a grinding stone? Maybe this will, yep, okay. So if I need 2, I actually need 4, because it's only counting the 1 grinder craft, I'm thinking. Got it? And then there go 2 of those. I'll make myself some extra room for a moment. And then my old parts. Yeah. And then the last thing I need is the copper bar times 3. Let's mix. Oh, I don't have enough copper for 3. Just been mining. What did I do with all the copper? Probably went into the bridge. I don't see any copper here. That's leather. I was curious. Got another book over here. Photo album. Raises my HP, I guess. So I would put it there, okay. I'm going to check if I can drop those books off at the research station. Would probably be a good idea for me to mine for copper again, but then I'd just be stuck underground for the rest of the day. It would kind of be nice to have a little bit of variety. I had mentioned last week that I was thinking about responding I think on YouTube the genre is reaction videos. As I'm looking at the concept of reaction videos, it strikes me how many videos on YouTube are actually responses to other videos. So okay, you're not the one I talked to if I... Yeah, okay. Yeah, these are the other side opposite the church. This is where you get the technology that's so forbidden.
Hello?
Petra's kind of nice.
I'm originally from Ethia. I came here because there are several old documents saying there exists a computer artificial intelligence called the All-Source around these parts. You still see a robot or two out and about in our cities once in a while, but this All-Source AI was supposed to be one of the best AIs ever created. I want to meet it.
Yeah, so she seems pretty nice.
Hi. Did you discover something new?
Her coworker is not quite as nice. Do I have 5?
That should be enough data disks. Still, if you want to expedite our research, you can submit more data disks. The more data, the faster we work. The data corruption on these disks are minimal. There should be useful info on them. We'll have something for you by tomorrow.
Okay. So this is where I get technology to help boost my tools and stuff, I guess. Which might be concerning if technology was the source of the darkness. Okay, that's what the old thermos piece looks like. I've got... Oh, have I already filled in one? I think I've got that piece somewhere in my inventory, so I'll have to look around. Haven't filled in any of that. Oh, I've already... No, I've only filled in the top part. Got bits of that. I know I've got the top, but I've got a base now that I don't think is here. So I should bring in some more of my, some more of those, relics. Yeah, that's... No, that's piece 2. I think I saw it in there. Yeah, I think it's catching the ones that are needed in my inventory. So it's filling them in, but it's not, since I don't have them all, I won't be able to apply them. And I can buy more technology over here. Maybe I can sell... I can't sell my books? Okay. But I can trade data disks for these items. I don't think I need a training dummy. I could trade in my power stones for this condensed power stone. But it looks like things might be extra expensive now. Maybe I don't want to do it today. A horse running backwards? That seems like a glitch. Can I sell these books anywhere else, I wonder?
Hi.
Let's see. No, you don't have these.
To you.
There we go. I just feel like I should be able to use that book. This one seems less like I could use it. But I feel like I ought to be able to use the cooking book for something. So I think I want to be reluctant about selling it. I'm kind of reluctant to sell that too. I've got enough bowls. Secret, what's that? Because Martha runs the bread.
Hey!
Oh, you're not Martha.
I've always been good with metal objects since I was little.
Oh, so
But since most metal objects are sharp and I don't like fighting people or hurting animals, I didn't really have a lot of job choices. See you!
See you. Martha?
Hello!
She runs the bakery.
My store is my pride and joy. Besides Toby, of course. Goodbye!
Or at least the bread shop. But then she's next to this, Roti's secret thing, which also looks like pastries. Oh, it's a secret. Because she's got the bread shop in plain sight, so what's that? And then Alice runs the flower shop over there. Which Which I guess if you want a special relationship with someone, you talk to her. So this would be above that Roti's secret sign. Oh, there's a chest down there. Is that the secret? Ah, missed. Hi, me.
Hi! Ugh, it's hard to run around in this heat, but I ain't gonna stop.
Gotta chase those news stories.
Bye!
Okay. Yay! I think I'm almost there. There we go. Bloodstone, whatever that is. Oh, Isaac's home. I didn't know he had a home. I guess it makes sense. But, he likes his books. I wonder if I could give him books. And he likes Go. Shop here, huh? What's this? Mousetrap? Yep, looks like a mousetrap. Okay. I'm done rummaging around the dark corners. Isaac tends to hang out back here, playing Go. Let me see if I can give him that Structural Dimensions book. Okay, I guess I'll consider him happy. That'll do, I'll take it, okay. Oh, and there's Django reading a book. Go figure. What are you doing, Django?
If you find any good recipes out there, be sure to bring them by. I'm always trying to improve the menu.
It's like you know what's in my inventory. Okay. Gotta pay him just to get this recipe he's offering up. Rice, bamboo papaya, and golden salmon. And he's still offering more recipes, but let's see if...
Oh, what a nice cookbook. I could always use more recipes to broaden my horizons. Thank you.
Welcome. I feel like that was special. I'm not sure. Sometimes you'll hand a character something and they'll say, thanks, but you could do better next time. And, oh man, you're not even grateful. Okay, so the copper bars are done. Can I make any progress here? Not enough materials because I didn't have enough copper for the last bar, which needs it. One more. I can go by the shop. I'm going to do that real quick. Tell you what, if I can, I may as well buy 4 copper from the shop. Well, no, they're not selling. What? The shop's supposed to be right here, right? Where did the shop go? Did it close? Do I need to come at certain times of the day? Well, that's a bummer. This seems like more stony terrain than coppery terrain. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Sorry, not stony terrain, more dirt terrain, I guess. I just want to make sure I get plenty of copper for twice the recipe. Is that what I'm thinking? Now I'm at the bottom of the level. Okay, I think I've got plenty of copper. I'm just going to see if I can use the map. Yep. Quick way to get out of the mine. The Commerce Guild product inspections are conducted Saturday and Sunday. I think it was saying I need to be a level C. My workshop needs to be a level C in order to compete or to be part of the inspections. I think that's the way I remember it working. It's getting late, but I want to at least see if I can start up one of those copper bars. I won't be able to finish it because I was planning on this being the last day of in-game time I would play. Okay, let's go ahead and make 4 total though. So 10 hours for 4. So I'll have to start this the next time that I play My Time at Portia, which will probably be in about a month. The way I've been going, I've been cycling through 4 games. So next week I'll be playing Raft, unless I've been thinking about... let's see. I'll go ahead and save this game, get out, and then I can go to full screen cam. Confirm, go to sleep. So that saves it, and then I'll end it there. Okay, they want her to get up before they let me get to the options. That's good. And oh, it's got my mouse captured there. So we'll start my let's pull up the Spotify music again really quick while I'm wrapping up. There we go. And then full screen cam. Okay. So I've been going through the games. I've got 4 games that I've been working through, so it takes me about a month to get to the next one if there are no interruptions. The next game I plan to play will be Raft. So stuck on a raft in the middle of the ocean and trying not to get eaten by a shark. Ideally, we would be eating the shark if we do well, which I've gotten pretty good at hunting him down. Also, given the holiday season, I'm trying to think through what I want to do. I mentioned that I'm planning on taking Christmas Eve off because that's going to be a Friday, so I think that would be good to take off. I'm also considering whether I want to take Black Friday off, not because I'm a big shopper or anything. I've just been feeling a little bit kind of under the weather when it comes to starting the stream, getting everything together and running. So I had been planning on when I might take a break. I think I'll go ahead and claim the holiday too, the Thanksgiving holiday, except I do it on Fridays, so I'll take Black Friday as my holiday, and then I'll be taking Christmas Eve off again. So I believe that means that the next time that I'll be streaming would be a week from this upcoming Friday. So next week I'll be off for Thanksgiving, and then the week after that, then I'll go ahead and be back in stream playing Raft, or one of the other things I was considering is reacting to videos, like YouTube videos, kind of creating the conversation that I want to have. I assume since if people are putting their beliefs out on YouTube, if they're anything like me, then maybe they would welcome some back and forth about that. My goal is to engage with other people's beliefs in a respectful way, so hopefully no one needs to be offended by me responding to them. I've been looking at one of the more recent short videos that Jordan Peterson has put out on his channel recently, called A Wing and a Prayer. I thought it was a good one to start on and kind of ruminate on. It's not necessarily a opposing worldview like I am interested in looking at and thinking about on the channel, but I think and certainly look up A Wing and a Prayer by Jordan Peterson. I think it's beneficial video, so it would be a good place for me to start. Also, it deals with some of the things that I'm considering as I'm thinking through how I want to run the channel. So it I'm not sure if I can do video responses and gameplay on the same night. That one's a short one. Maybe I could. But then again, the next time I stream, I'm also going to be covering the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. So that's probably going to take a lot of time and effort to get through. So we'll have to wait and see how the next stream works out. Not this upcoming Friday, but the Friday after. And then hopefully, since I'm taking the week off, then I'll have a little bit more energy and be a bit more ready about starting the streams, getting going. And then I was saying I would be playing Raft if I'm not doing the reaction video. So I know the genre is called reaction video. I don't want to have an emotional response to important subjects. So more like a response video, I think, would be better. My mom's an avid news watcher, and she has kind of noticed how newscasters, when they're having an interview with someone, they'll say, "What is your reaction to such and such?" Which, of course, is there to stir up drama. They want a reaction because they want someone to blurt out something that they want them to blurt off of the top of their head, or blurt whatever's on their heart. But often when you blurt things out, you wind up saying things that you wish you were not recorded and in the hands of someone else who can edit them and show you back the words you said. So I would like to be more considered to give more of a response than a reaction to things that I'm looking at on the channel. Of course, I don't have a lot of practice with discussion of differing viewpoints, so that's a way that the channel can help me to develop personally, and hopefully I would get better at responding as time goes on. So I think I was going to take a drink of this and I never did. It feels like I never did. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. So I'll see you in a couple weeks at Friday at 8 p.m. So not this upcoming Friday because I'm taking a break, but the following Friday at 8 p.m. What time is that on the calendar? Let's see if my computer can inform me there. So that will actually be December the 3rd that I'll be back to streaming. And until then, God bless you and play kind.